In the Second World War, there were many different countries that found themselves at war with the Nazis, collaborating with them or occupied by them. One country that worked alongside the German army was Romania, and their country turned into a dictatorship following a coup by Ion Antonescu. The regime instilled then outlined their support for the Germans and officially joined the Axis powers. Romania were involved in the invasion of the Soviet Union and in Operation Barbarossa, but their soldiers were also known for horrific persecution and massacre. Some historians see their contribution to the Axis powers as secondary to Germany itself, but as the war turned against the Allies, the country found itself heavily bombed and eventually overtaken by the advancing Red Army. But for Prime Minister Antonescu, his time was up. So join us today as we look at the execution of Ion Antonescu, the Prime Minister of Romania, and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Ion Antonescu was born into a bourgeois family which had some military background. He was born in 1882 and was a student at a number of military schools within Romania. He was a keen student and graduated in cavalry school as top of his class, and he did not shy away from conflict as he made a name for himself during the 1907 Peasants' Revolt, in which he was in charge of a cavalry unit, and it was said that he was very violent in quashing the revolt with his unit. He managed to subdue the revolt in one city and was praised by the king and prince for his effort. Antonescu was promoted a number of times, but when Romania entered the First World War in 1916, he was a chief of staff for General Constantin Prețan. In this, he played a key role in Romania's successful defence against German soldiers, but after the war he was also part of a military attaché in Paris and London. He continued to rise throughout different positions and gained more authority upon his return to Romania, before becoming the Defence Minister in 1937. He then, in September 1940, rose to the position of Prime Minister. The King's popularity at the time was a record low, and Antonescu was appointed to help sort out the crisis. But within 2 days of being in the position of Prime Minister, the King transferred most of his dictatorial powers to Antonescu, and with this, he became the dictator of Romania. He had forced the king off his throne, but his son did succeed him, but Michael was a puppet for Antonescu's regime. At the time in Europe, war was very much underway, but Romania found themselves surrounded by two huge foreign powers, and Antonescu then had to make the decision as to form an alliance with one of them to protect Romania and the interests of his country. He chose to side with Nazi Germany, and he hoped that by joining an alliance with them, that Romania would be protected. At the time, the Germans were aggressively expanding into new lands and were occupying large swathes of Europe. He hoped that Romania could be of use for Hitler in Nazi Germany, and Hitler saw the country as a valuable resource due to the oil inside of the nation, and he thought this would be useful for the German war effort. He built an alliance with the revolutionary fascist party of the Iron Guard, and these were strongly anti-communist and anti-Semitic groups within Romania. Antonescu, when he came into power, brought the Iron Guard with him, but he later was forced to destroy the movement after the Legionnaires' rebellion. Their leader argued constantly with Antonescu, and Sima thought that the economic policy of Romania should be worked out with Germany, but Antonescu saw him as a threat. He gained Hitler's support and the support of the army to launch a 3-day civil war against the Iron Guard, and he won decisively, with the Romanian and German army backing him. At one point during the crisis, the Iron Guard were heavily involved in instigating deadly and savage attacks on the Jews, with many being executed publicly and mutilated. The Iron Guard party was smashed, but more bloodshed came. In June 1940, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, and Antonescu sent his troops with them as well. Romanian units served with German units, and initially it was thought by the Germans that the Roman army was poorly equipped and had insufficient armour and training. Antonescu ordered, without the Germans, for the Romanian army to maintain a 2-month siege of Odessa, and the Fourth Army suffered heavy losses of around 100,000 men. In Odessa there were large-scale massacres of the Jewish population, and this was allegedly ordered by Antonescu in reprisal. He was in regular meetings with Hitler and his German military commanders, and Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel described him as a capable soldier dedicated to his mission in life, open-hearted and forthright, but uncommunicative and often blunt. With the Germans, the Romanians fought deep into the Soviet Union, and following the Battle of Moscow, they were asked to provide more soldiers for the German war effort. Antonescu was briefed on the planned Battle of the Caucasus, and for committing his soldiers, Antonescu was given a car from Hitler. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, Romania also declared war on America, but everything changed following the Battle of Stalingrad. During the horrific fighting around the city, Romania lost around 150,000 men, and more than half of their divisions were wiped out. They continued to lose many soldiers throughout the following months as the Soviets advanced, retaking their lands from the German and Axis invaders. His time as dictator of Romania saw him oversee a number of massacres of Jews, in which his soldiers slaughtered thousands. In the final weeks of December 1941, for example, his soldiers killed around 70,000 Jews at the Bogdanovka camp, and Antonescu justified it as a necessary evil to stop typhus spreading because of the poor conditions. As mentioned, the Odessa massacre was an act of punishment carried out by the Romanian army, and it's estimated that over 50,000 Jews were killed there. It's been claimed to have been the largest single massacre of Jews in the Second World War, and they were shot, hanged, and some were even burned alive. Antonescu claimed the events were merely reprisals and not war crimes, and dozens of thousands more people were forced out of the Odessa area. Antonescu stated, "Pack them in the catacombs, throw them in the Black Sea, but get them out of Odessa. I don't want to know, 100 can die, 1,000 can die, all of them can die, but I don't want a single Romanian officer to die." Following the loss of Stalingrad, Antonescu's popularity dwindled, and in April 1944, the Russian soldiers ordered the Romanians to surrender. He refused to do so, remaining stern in his support for Hitler, and in spring 1944, large-scale Allied bombing raids took place in Bucharest. The battle for Romania began in the summer. However, as the Romanians were losing heavily, the opportunity to overthrow Antonescu came, and the royal coup of the 23rd of August occurred, in which he was removed from power, and King Michael I of Romania, who led the coup, placed Antonescu under arrest, and then switched sides, joining the Allies and abandoning the Axis cause, and also declaring war on Germany. Ioan Antonescu was placed in the custody of PCR militants, and he was held in a number of different places. He was later handed over to the Soviets, who transferred him to Moscow, and was then given rather luxurious mansions in the city, but was kept under house arrest. He was guarded heavily by secret forces, but after the end of the Second World War in Europe, he was moved to Lubyanka prison. Here he was interrogated by the secret services, and he was seen as a key perpetrator of the Holocaust, as his Romanian soldiers were known for performing genocide and organising mass shootings. Whilst he was held in prison, he tried to take his own life, but he then was returned to Romania and Bucharest. He was imprisoned in the Jilaca prison and was interrogated, but during this he complained about his treatment back home. He complained about the conditions in prison and that he was a vegetarian and he had not been given a special diet. In May 1946, Antonescu was prosecuted and charged with crimes against peace, treason and war crimes. He was represented by 2 public defenders, and they failed to establish his defence that he had no say in the war and in fact was overruled by Germany, and that he was forced to pick a side between the Soviets and Nazi Germany. Much of the evidence at its trial was uncovered about the massacres oversaw in his time looking after the war effort. Ioan Antonescu was found guilty of the charges put before him, and he tried to appeal twice, but they were both rejected, and he was subsequently sentenced to death. He even tried to appeal to the king for clemency, but nothing happened with regards to this. On the 1st of June 1946, he was led out of his prison to an execution site near to the Jilava prison. A firing squad had been gathered to execute the former Prime Minister of Romania, and Antonescu was led out to face them. In a clearing, he was accompanied to his execution by 4 other men who were dying that day, and Antonescu was the most high profile to be executed. He was tied to a stake to ensure that he could not move, and images show him stood rather nonchalantly, with his arms crossed and his palms clasped in his final moments. The charges and confirmation of death was read, and then shortly after the firing squad were readied. They were told to aim, and then quickly they fired upon the men, including Antonescu, who was killed instantly. He refused to wear a blindfold facing his executioners, and he raised his hat in a salute once the order to fire was given. At the end of the firing squad, Ion Antonescu had his final moments. He was seen as a warmonger who had overseen barbaric massacres in the course of the Second World War. By choosing to side with Hitler, he nailed his flag to a post and was willing to send his country into the Axis alliance alongside Hitler. He is regarded as a key perpetrator of the Holocaust, and through his policies, he was responsible for the deaths of around 400,000 people, including Bessarabian, Romanian, and Ukrainian Jews, as well as the Romani. His execution for many was seen as a necessary thing for Romania to move on following World War II. Once again, thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.